This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers.
Hi, this is Brandon Butchin.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, I'm Corey Coward, left wing for the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to Bob Howard on the Power Play Post Show.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for March 23rd, 2023. I want to welcome you back. This is Season 12, Episode 2. And, of course, we can't forget that this is also Episode 375 in the long-running show that took a little hiatus a little bit, but we're back. And I want to thank everybody from listening last week. I was pretty happy with the response, the amount of listens that we got. And then, of course, I did the updates during the weekend after the games, giving you a little quick recap and my thoughts on the games. And that's where we're going to start off this week and everything. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, there's all the different things that we are now on, which is very cool. Thank you for listening. That's the most important thing. But the Black Bears did pretty good last week, right? They had a 3-game weekend, 3 games in 3 nights, 3 wins and 9 points. That's basically what they came up with, and very impressed with what they did. And very happy with the way they played. First of all, as I said in the recap after the first game, they dominated that game. That first game against Elmira was pretty much a dominating effect and everything. They won the game 6-2 in Elmira, which is pretty impressive. And then they won at home on Saturday night 4-1. An impressive showing by the fans. I thought that was a pretty good number, the mid 4,000s. So pretty impressed with that, with them coming back and everything. So let's look at this. Against Elmira this season, they're 7-1. So they've had their spot against Elmira, and it's good because I remember last year there was a lot of teams that had our spot, that they were winning a lot of games against us, like Danbury and Watertown, and how the roles have reversed a little bit, which is pretty nice. Shots on goal in those 2 games, 98 between the 2 games, 50 on Friday night and then 48 on Saturday night. And I'll be honest with you, the more you pepper the opposing goaltender, the better chances you're going to have. And they had a lot of good chances. Gavin Yates scored 2 goals on Friday night. Taylor Joseph had 27 saves on Saturday. And Jestin Somero, the new guy, 2 goals, 1 goal on Friday night and 1 goal on Saturday night. Both games I thought the Black Bears played very well. And what did they do well? We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But then there was the win at home on Sunday versus Watertown. The game was 7-4, a lot of goals in that game. Maybe some tired legs affected that, possibly. And honestly, it didn't look like they had tired legs, but I'm wondering if just the reaction time, because both teams played north to south hockey pretty well in that game. We are also 7-1 this season against the Watertown Wolves. So that's pretty impressive as well. Shots on goal in that game for the Black Bears was 54. So that's obviously a good number. So, we'll talk about that in just a little bit too. And Andrew Logar, the other newcomer, because they did sign 2 players, and both of those players scored this weekend. Both of those players had more than 1 point this weekend, which is very important. He had a goal. Donald Oliveri had 2 goals, a 3-goal weekend total, so that was good. Austin Thompson, 2 goals, a 3-goal weekend as well. Gavin Yates scored his 3rd goal of the weekend. So we had 3 players have 3 goals on the weekend. So a goal a game from Donald, Austin, and Gavin Yates. Very, very huge. Very huge. This is very important. Tyler Jurge obviously got the one goal, or 2 goals actually as well. So my overall thoughts on the 3 games. First of all, they played north to south hockey. That is very important. When you're playing primarily east to west and you're going, playing perimeter hockey, your shots aren't always that quality. I think the quality shots that they had were so much better. So I got to say that north to south hockey was very important. Watertown played that very well as well, which is why they also scored a few extra goals than what Elmira was able to muster in the first 2 games. I also believe, and this was a problem last year, that this year there are less defensive breakdowns, and especially in these 3 games, and the opposing team's breakaways wasn't as big. There was a couple in the Watertown game, but I think they held Elmira in check on that, which was nice. And it just happened a lot less this past weekend, and the results are obviously huge, and it works for it. Again, the new guys stepped up. Logar and Somero fit in like they've always been here. It really felt like those guys just fit into the system very, very well. And so I have to say that I think they're a nice addition, and with Tyler Jurge obviously, being in the back on the team and playing with the team and everything, I think our scoring is going to be okay. And the more that Black Bears score, the less the other teams score. At least it seems like that this year. Other than the end of the Watertown games, the Black Bears did not play over the edge. And here's what I mean by that. I want to talk about this for a little bit. This is more of a philosophy than I'm not going to pull out stats or anything like that. You guys can all look at the box scores to see this. But there were no 10-minute misconducts. There actually, at the end of the Watertown game, there was. But there wasn't that, blowing up, falling off the edge, going kind of bonkers, right? Instead you had a team that, got into the scrums a little bit, but there really wasn't much that really got. And the philosophy behind this is like you play up to a certain edge, but you don't go over that edge, right? Mark Borowiecki was that guy for the Binghamton Senators. He could play up to the edge, but not go over. And that's something that Klein Doris and Luke Richards was working with him before he went up to the NHL, making sure that he didn't go over the edge, so to speak. And so I think the Black Bears have had that problem this year. They're sticking up for each other. They're getting involved in altercations, and that's okay. But when you go over the edge, like we've seen a little bit, it can affect the team, and it can hamper the team. And we didn't see that this weekend. So let's hope that that's out of their system a little bit, right? Because you got to prepare for the playoffs. And, if you want to win a championship, if you really truly want to bring a championship to the city, for your team, for your teammates, for the fans, and let me be honest, when you take a look at the fans here in Binghamton and what they did, there was the video that the Gormans put together, where they, Karen and Casey Gorman organized, getting all the fans to, send the tributes and the love to the players coming back from the long road trip, and a hard road trip for that matter. They got all that together. That's what the fans in Binghamton are going to do, right? So they will, in a sense, play for you, be the sixth man on the ice. I got to do the math now to make sure I'm doing that right. Seventh man on the ice, right? And when they do that and the players react to it, and I think the players probably did react to it. I think they were probably pretty surprised and happy with those videos. And so you want to play up to an edge, but you don't want to go over that edge too much. There's a lot of talk in the FPHO about the referees and the calls that they make, and that they're thin-skinned, so to speak. And that might be the case a little bit. These guys are probably not making that much money. They probably don't have the same experience and the same knowledge of the rule books. or maybe they know the rule books really well, and that's the reason why they're calling this stuff. But at the same time, we're also seeing players who, are also not getting paid that much, and there's emotions that are going to happen, right? So playing up to an edge is okay. Just not going over that edge is the important thing here. So I was very happy with the way the team played this past weekend. And I think if they continue that same kind of play going into Motor City, the 2 games against Motor City, that will probably play into their favor. And, again, every 3 games, you want to make sure that you're winning 2 out of those 3 games. So the rest of the way, that's what you kind of have to think about, right? So maybe this weekend, because there's only 2 games this weekend, how do you factor that in? Well, with there being, about 4 weekends left in the regular season, you're still looking to win 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3. So however you do the math, that's important. Obviously, we know that the Black Bears are locked in at second place for sure in the Empire Division. I think Elmira is about 3 points away from actually getting into the playoffs. Right. So, them in Watertown, I don't even think, I think the way it's going to be is the way it is right now. I think Danbury is going to be number 1. Binghamton's going to be number 2. Watertown's going to be number 3, and Elmira is going to be number 4. It's pretty, I don't think Elmira has enough time in the season to get, past Watertown to take over 3rd place. So they'll make the playoffs. Probably even this weekend, it'll happen. But let's talk a little bit about this upcoming weekend for the Black Bears. Okay, so the Black Bears have 2 games in Fraser, Michigan, to play against the Motor City Rockers. Now we've already played 2 games against the Motor City Rockers. They are in third place in the Continental Division with a record of 26-16-6 with 81 points. They have 2 games played so far. We've played 2 games so far against the Rockers way back early in the season, November 11th and November 12th. It was a 6-3 win and a 6-5 shootout loss. I believe that's the only shootout loss we've had this season. I'm pretty confident on that mark. In the Fed, let's see here. In the Fed, from November to late March is a lot of time. So a lot of things can change with teams. As we all know, back then in November, we had Nikita Ivashkin. We had MJ Merkel. Teams changed. They evolved. So what we saw then might not be what we see this weekend. We might be a better defensive team this weekend than maybe we will be maybe than we were back in November. So this will be interesting to see how these 2 games work out. 2 games at the beginning of the season, 2 games at the end of the season. How do the 2 teams match up? And with them being 3rd in the Continental Division and we're 2nd in the Empire Division, and our points, we're very similar teams in that sense. The treks that we've had this season. So they have won their last 2 games. All right, so they're on a little bit of a winning streak as well. We've won our last 3. They've won their last 2, so it'll be interesting. They're led by Scott Koch. He's got 31 goals, 21 assists for 54 points. And Declan Conway, 20 goals and 22 assists for 44 points. Former Delaware goalie Trevor Babin, their lead goaltender, 17, 12, and 4. Is on their team this season, and everybody will remember Trevor because he's the guy that fought Owen Liskowitz on February 19th of 2022 from last season. So that was fun to get to see. Trevor Babin and Owen Liskowitz go last season and everything. I'm not saying that anything's going to happen this weekend with that, but it still is interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the playoffs for a little bit. Okay, I think it's going to be very similar to last year in the sense that there's going to be 3 game rounds, right? So you're going to probably see the best of 3 series coming up. The conversation that we've seen so far is 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. Lower seed gets the home game, probably game 1, right, to guarantee that they get the home game. I'm sure arena availability is very important on that. Finals might get a 5-game series, but it depends on travel and arena availability, and obviously the two teams will decide that for the championship series. So if that's the case right now, we're looking Binghamton versus Watertown for the first round, and of course we've beaten them 7-1. Last year was very interesting because we lost 2-1 to the Danbury Hat-Tricks, but I think we have a better chance in the first round this year. And again, it really what it comes down to, and if we do play Watertown, I think everybody who's on the team could travel with the team to Watertown for that first game. It's kind of very important. I know that Donald Oliveri has that interesting, situation about, when he can travel, when he can't travel, prior engagements. Now, of course, you got to remember, these guys don't make a lot of money in the Fed, right? That's very well known. Slinging with a Biscuit went over that on his podcast, his YouTube channel. Definitely something I would recommend everyone to check out because he talks about how much they make or don't make. And Donald Oliveri has other jobs and other engagements that, provide a living for him, right? So we would hope that everybody can travel from Binghamton to Watertown, or in Donald's case, from Pennsylvania, where he lives in Pennsylvania, up to Watertown as well for that first game. Okay. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Elmira is the only team that hasn't clinched, but could do so this weekend. If I pull up the standings here, we'll go over that real quick before we move into the segment I want to play from an interview that I did years ago and everything with Coach Kleinendorst from the Binghamton Senators. Obviously, it's up on the podcast, and you can listen to the full interview with Coach K that I did. I affectionately just call him Coach, and I think he was okay with that. But let's pull up the standings here, and we'll talk about this for just a few seconds. In the Continental Division, everybody has clinched, right? So Mississippi is out, right? The Mississippi Seawolves, their first season, they're 14-29-4 right now through 47 games. What I really liked about Mississippi is they came into the league playing a couple games in Biloxi before this season, and it seemed to work out pretty well and everything. And unfortunately, they weren't able to get a team together. But that's the difficulty of new teams, right? If you think about it, the new teams that come in, they have a hard time cementing themselves, especially in single A hockey where you don't have an NHL affiliate sending down players to you, right? And you're really not getting that ECHL talent, playing on your team as well. But in the Continental Division, Columbus has 105 points. Carolina has 98 points. Motor City has 81. We'll see those guys this weekend in Fraser, Michigan, where the Motor City Rockers play. And, of course, the Port Huron Prowlers have 76 points. I don't want to say that it's a better division. Statistically, they kind of are. And so that's kind of like how it kind of looks right now. But in the Empire Division, the Danbury Hat-Tricks have 105 points. They were the first team to go over 100 points, and they have 105 just like Columbus does right now. Danbury's played one less game, so they have 3 extra points on the table that they could get. So they could win I don't know, does the Fed have a President's Trophy type of thing if you're regular season champion? They probably do. I'll just have to look that up and everything. Binghamton has 91 points. Technically, I guess Binghamton is third in the Fed, right, behind Carolina and Columbus. Actually, no, they would be fourth in the Fed. So they would be behind Danbury, Columbus, Carolina, if you did it that way. But they're second in the Empire Division. And so it's them. And then you have the Watertown Wolves with 49 points. Big drop-off between Binghamton, Danbury, and then Watertown and Elmira, right? Probably why the Continental Division's a little bit better of a division. Motor City and Port Huron, few more wins, more than a few more wins, I guess, than Watertown and Elmira. So that is basically those two divisions. Delaware is probably out of it. Sometime this weekend, Elmira, all they need to do is get 3 points, and they clinch a spot, and then Delaware is out of it. Obviously, we'll get to this after I play this interview that I did with Coach Kleinendorst from the Binghamton Senators. He was talking in 2012 about getting into the playoffs and then winning against the Manchester Monarchs. Why do I bring this up? Because of what I talked about earlier, right? Sometimes you go through adversity. I think the Binghamton Black Bears went through some adversity recently, with all the issues that they were having going over the edge, getting some of the 10-minute game misconducts and the misconducts and things of that nature. And you go through some adversity. And one of the things that Coach Kleinendorst talked about all the time, and if any of the players are listening to this show, I mean no disrespect, right? I am just calling it the way I see it. This is what I see. And this is because of the people that I've been around in the hockey world as a media member in the Binghamton area. And I've also been a media member in Manchester, and I've been credentialed in a lot of different places and talked to a lot of different people and talked to NHL general managers. Okay, so this is just from some knowledge that I know. And one of the things they talk about all the time is, again, I don't want to always repeat myself, but playing to an edge and not going over that edge. And I think Binghamton did that a little bit in the losing streak. And because they got frustrated, and that's kind of understandable, right? But Coach K specifically had kind of a motto, right? When you lay your head down at night after a win or a loss, the next day you wake up and it's completely forgotten. You have to forget about it. So we're going to play this little bit of clip here from Coach K, and I'll be back on the other side to talk about a few other things that might be going down in the Fed. I'll be right back. Why did the team make the playoffs? Why did the team win that series?
Well, I think one of the things first of all, you can't win 4 games in overtime and not feel a little bit fortunate,
Yeah,
and you can't avoid a penalty shot in a second overtime and not feel a little bit fortunate. I mean, that's the one thing that I marvel at is we were so close to not getting to the second round. And I said all along that the key to us winning a championship would be whether or not we could get through the first round. And I felt like if we could find a way to get through the first round, I just knew that we were just going to get better and better and better and better. Because we hadn't been together for a while as a group, and it turns out that that's exactly what happened. But if you need, from my end, why was it we were able to manage to get through that particular series? It was just that we established early on that we weren't going to be getting too excited when we won hockey games, and we weren't going to start beating ourselves up when we lost hockey games. That when we won a game, we would enjoy it until our heads hit the pillow, you remember this, and wake up the next morning and start getting focused for the next game. And just like if we lost a game, okay, guys, this has to sting until our heads hit the pillow. But then when we wake up, you got to let it go, and we got to start focusing for the next one.
What's interesting about what he's saying is he said that all throughout the season. He said that all next season. The final year that he was here coaching in Binghamton, 16-17, before the Devils came. He talked about that as well. This was an important thing that he tried to stress to people, that you cannot look at what happened in the past and dwell on it and then go into the future. It's a mindset that's very difficult for probably a lot of people in America to kind of accept. You accept what happened and then you move on. Right? Go to bed at night, put your head down on the pillow. Next morning, you forget about it. Whether it was a positive thing or a negative thing that happened to you, you have to move on from that. And I think that's huge in sports. I think it really, really is huge in sports. So a couple things I want to get to before we end this podcast. First of all, thanks again for listening. I really, really appreciate it. I'm enjoying coming back. I've already talked to a few people about a couple interviews that will be happening in the future. I'm working on some technology upgrades here for my phone interviews. So I'll be working on that over the next couple weekends. I've already got the equipment. It's just a matter of tweaking things out and just making sound as good as possible. It's something that I've put a lot of pride in over the years when doing my podcasts. And again, I started back before they even called them podcasts. And then when they started calling them podcasts, and it was a negative thing because they thought you were some guy in his grandma's basement, doing podcasts, and it was a bad thing. I didn't call it a podcast. I called it a radio show on the internet, because that's really what I was driving to do. And now pretty much 1 million people have it, and heck, even in the Fed here, there's probably 6, 7, 8 podcasts of people covering the Fed. But let's talk about a couple things. There's a Twitter handle out there called @GCBombers, the Golden City Bombers. I want to thank Gary Ryan from Fed Flash. That's a YouTube channel. Gary's a great guy. Covered the Binghamton Black Bears for a little while, and then he kind of stopped, and I started up my show, and now he's doing the Fed Flash. Check him out for sure. He kind of brought this to our attention, obviously, today. So their first tweet is, "Welcome everyone to the Golden City Bombers Twitter account. Brian, Brandon, and myself are working hard to bring professional hockey back to Topeka, Kansas, which has failed multiple times. I'm just going to add that in there. We are in negotiations with the FPHL and plan on playing our home games out of the Stormont Vale Events Center." And that's spelled CENTRE, because let's do it the Canadian way, of course. That has a seating capacity for hockey of 7,773. I can tell you, just reviewing some of the chatter about this and looking into it, Topeka has lost a lot of teams over the years, and the teams come in and they don't last all that long. This would kind of be an addition to maybe the markets that are already being planned for next season, which is Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which they'd be playing at the Raising Cane's River Center Arena. And then in Virginia, there is another team in Wytheville, Virginia, at the Appalachian Exposition, Apex Center. So that'll be interesting there. The team in Baton Rouge is supposed to be owned by Barry Soskin, and then of course the team in Virginia is supposed to be owned by the Apex Drive Holdings LLC. Another interesting thing that is possibly coming out sometime next week, I think on the 28th, there might be a press conference with the Delaware Thunder, talking about moving that team to Ashton, PA, which is basically a suburb of Philadelphia. It's a small little place, kind of like Watertown, kind of like where Delaware is playing right now. Seating on the one side, standing room around the rest of the rink. I got to be honest with you. If it's me, I'd be looking for 3,000 seat arenas, 2,500 seat arenas at the minimum, and negotiate a good lease on those arenas, but not, because you can't pay too much because you may not make enough money. Topeka is a risky chance. So this is 3 teams that could be here next year. And then, maybe we see Delaware move to outside of Philly. Now, can they break into the Flyers market realistically and draw fans? I don't know. I don't know what fans would go there. Yeah, sure, it's going to be lower cost, but are they going to, would you, on a Friday night, if the Flyers are playing and you can't get tickets to the Flyers, sit home and watch the Flyers play because they're your favorite team? Or would you spend $20 to go see the Fed? I don't know. I really, really honestly don't know. So that'll be kind of interesting to see what happens there. So we're almost close to our 30 minutes, and I really wanted to try to get this to 30 minutes today, this week. I want to thank everybody for watching. I'm probably going to go over a couple minutes. I want everybody to know that Spotify and, of course, Anchor is really the best place to go to listen to it. But Apple Podcasts, we're on iHeartRadio now. So you can actually go to your smart device, and if you have an iHeartRadio, you can actually play it through your smart device. You can let it ring through the whole house and everything, and let the Power Play Post show be there. And all the interviews are there that I've been putting up. I'm going to keep putting up some old ones. I do want to say that I'm a little saddened because I was thinking about it today. I was looking through some of the old interviews. Last May we lost Eric Lindquist out of Worcester. He was the broadcaster for the Worcester Sharks for a very long time, for a good amount of time. And then, of course, the Railers that were in there. I did some Woosocks and everything. And Eric was just a really good friend of the Power Play Post Show. One of the things that I did over the years is I bridged together some good connections, some people. Another great friend of mine from the old days was Phil Jubileo, who is just he was a great broadcaster, and we still just kind of chirp at each other just a little bit, which is kind of nice on Twitter. And he's a phenomenal guy, and also on Instagram, he and I definitely still communicate. But there are other people within the league that I built relationships up with. Newkirk, who's now with the Dallas Stars, but he was with the Texas Stars, and he was in Elmira for a little bit, and I think up in Albany. So there are definitely people out there. But when I just was flipping through and I saw the one for Eric Lindquist. So please take a listen to the Lindquist interview. He is a fun guy, was a fun guy. And I know a lot of people that know him miss him a lot. Probably one of the nicest guys and the funnest guys you'll ever meet. Game show lover, won the big showcase on The Price is Right. I believe he was a Wheel of Fortune teen champion or something like that. And just a great guy. So check it out. But either way, so Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and just thank you for listening to the Power Play Post Show. I am Bob Howard. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about the Motor City Rockers 2 games that the Black Bears are playing, any other news that comes up within the Fed or anything that I want to talk about. But either way, be safe out there, and you've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week from the Box Studios Radio Network to keep up to date with the latest news, scores, and interviews by visiting www.pppshow.net. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.